Accessibility is changing next year, and there's good reason for it to change. Now, I'm going to share a story with you about a experience I had recently, and I'm really pleased to invite Hannah back to talk. Now, I spoke to Hannah about the struggles that I had, and she assured me that this is quite normal for most people. So I'm going to share my experience, and hopefully it resonates with you. So welcome back, Hannah. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
So as you explained so well in the last video, there's legislation coming in for accessibility in June 2025. But for anyone that hasn't watched that video, can you just tell us a little bit about what's coming in and when it's coming in?
Yes, so there's a change in European law with the European Accessibility Act, which is coming into play June 2025. And it will affect some British businesses who trade in the EU. Even amongst those that this law doesn't affect, I can see that the industry will change somewhat, because it will create a lot more conversation around accessibility, and people's understanding of it will go up, and businesses will start to look at what they can do to improve.
I've got to be honest, when we first met for coffee and you said about us doing a video together, I really wasn't sure about how accessibility affected me as a visually impaired person until you asked me about any experiences that I'd had. And one that sprung to mind that I'm going to share with people now was me booking a swim slot at a local lake. Now, they had opened up a booking system so you could book 3 sessions for 3 separate weeks. So I'm pretty good on my phone. I can zoom in, etc. And my central vision is still quite good. So I went onto this website and I tried to book, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was just really difficult to fathom where we were going, how you navigate between one page and the next page. And I spoke to Hannah about it, and then she was like, this is exactly the reason these laws need to come in. So it's quite funny, because I actually tried to book these sessions and it was so difficult that I ended up going, you know what, I'm not even going to bother. So I left it, and a couple of days later I got phoned up by the organisers, and they said, we can see that you've tried to book in for some swims, but you haven't purchased, you haven't finished off the transaction. And I said, well, I tried really hard, but I just couldn't make it work. Couldn't get to the last bit of the actually pay my money and following through. So the really nice lady said, you know what, I assume you don't want 21 swims, because that's how many times I've been trying to book. 21 failed attempts. So she booked in 3 sessions, 3 separate Mondays, and that was all good. Now, I said to this lady, if I want to book more sessions, can I just phone you up to say? And she said, don't worry about it. Just when you get to the end of the 3 swims, then try again. And I thought, well, maybe 3 weeks. They might have time to change the website, make it a bit more accessible, a bit easier. And interestingly, people that I spoke to that don't have a visual impairment also struggled to book on. A lot of people saying, well, what a horrible website, but they persevered and got through. So we did the swims, and sure enough, I got to the 3rd swim, which is 3 weeks later, and I said to the guy that was doing the registration, he said, oh, I see you're not booked in for next week. I said, no, I really struggled with the website, so would you be able to book it on? And the response was the same, actually. Just go on the website and try, and just see how you get on. So I then went back to the website. It was exactly the same, and I didn't even bother. So my 3 swims were my 3 swims, and that was that. And for me, I love swimming. I go open water swimming every week, and I would have gone there every week pay more money, but because the website was just so tricky, I just didn't even bother. And that was that. So I didn't really think much of it. And then I was talking to you, Hannah, and we had a chat about accessibility, and this was basically something that you deal with all the time.
Yes, I generally help website owners to make their products and services easier to use in general, and some of that goes into accessibility. So I did have a look at that site that you told me that you struggled with, and it wasn't really a surprise to me, because straight away I could see that the brand colours look very nice, but a lot of the rest of the website was in the brand colours, and they don't meet colour contrast standards for accessibility. So we're looking at the fact that the text of the main navigation doesn't stand out enough from the background colours, which is probably one of many reasons why you struggle to navigate through the website.
And the really interesting thing that you mentioned was that actually there's statistics all about how this impacts business. So you might think that actually it's only a few people who are having problems, but you've got some really interesting stats about how this affects business from a financial point of view, haven't you?
Yeah, so it pains me to hear your story, but unfortunately you're not alone in this. Yeah, so these stats are from the website Scope. It really shows that there's big financial benefits to businesses that can comply with these accessibility standards. The first being that the online spending power of people with access needs is 24.8 billion a year.
Per year, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's so much money.
And like we saw with your example, Rob, 7 in 10 disabled customers said that they will click away from a website that they find difficult to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I gave an example recently, but I do that all the time. If I click onto a website which I find too tricky to navigate, then I will happily spend more money going to a website that is a lot easier, which is crazy again, because you are losing money, easy money. Money's there to be spent, but if your website isn't accessible, then you're missing out.
And just like you've just said, it's quoted that 86% chose to pay more for a product from an accessible website rather from a website that was harder to use.
Which is really interesting. I've definitely done that. It's why accessibility is so important, not just for people with disabilities, but for elderly people, young people, people that have got money to spend. If it's not accessible for them, then they'll spend it elsewhere.
Yeah, and the next stat obviously shows that once people find a website that they're comfortable with, they will keep going back to it, because 83% of participants in the study with access needs, they limit their shopping to sites that they know are accessible.
Yeah, again, I definitely do that. I have websites I know that work. And interestingly, websites that I know that aren't accessible for me, I will either ask other people to buy the stuff for me and then I give them the money, or again, I just find a website that I know is going to work.
And as we know, this new law is going to specifically affect e-commerce sites, British-owned e-commerce sites that sell products or services into the EU. And we know the change in accessibility law is, the European accessibility law is going to directly affect e-commerce businesses. And Scope have the stat here that 4 million people abandoned retail websites because of barriers. And they estimate that there is a loss of 11.75 billion, which comes from what they call the click away pound.
That's really, really interesting. So one of my reservations when we were talking about this is, as a business owner myself, and as a visually impaired person, one of 2 million in the UK, do you think that there's going to be any kind of pushback from businesses, small business and e-commerce, that are going to be resistant or just not want to change their things to help improve accessibility?
I think that might be the case at the moment, but I think this law being passed or brought in will help the conversation towards it, and people who maybe aren't taking it so importantly will start to think, right, this is important, what can we do about it? The Scope website quotes the main barriers within organisations for adopting accessibility standards include lack of clear ownership with the organisation, lack of the right people or skills, finding it hard to justify the spend, not sure what accessibility actually means, and senior leadership not convinced of the benefits. Hopefully some of those financial stats we provided earlier could help to change some people's minds.
Absolutely. And I think as someone that is on both sides of the argument, there is luckily an opportunity for businesses to employ disabled people. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I do a lot of use testing in the work that I do, which is after I've designed something, I will sit down with representative users of the product or service, and I will get them to try out the designs and see what's working well and not so well. And there are actually companies out there which require disabled use testers. So it's sort of ad hoc work where you could be called up when there's an opportunity, and you can register your interest for this online. That means that all you'll be asked to do is to maybe join an online meeting and use the product or service. People will tell you exactly what they want you to do, the journey through the website that they want you to take, and they simply just want your feedback to find out how well the service is working.
It's great that companies are making use of disabled users, because I think their feedback can be something that is very hard to get without it. So real life users that have got real life issues, helping companies improve accessibility is a good thing. And talking about that, Hannah's agreed to have a look at my website, Focus for Fitness. It's a Norwich-based coaching and training platform for me to sell my services, and actually I'm interested to know how accessible my website is and what I can do to make my website better for disabled users and everybody, because there's 2 million, I can't remember what the number was she said now, but there's a lot of money riding on it, so I want to make sure that I'm doing well with it. So thank you, Hannah, for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed that. If you know anybody that is disabled and looking for work opportunities, then we'll put some kind of places in the video description, so you can go and check that out and get registered to help accessibility. And if you're a business owner or you know someone that might be affected by accessibility legislation in 2025, then feel free to pass this video on or tag them in the comments or whatever. So we'll see you next time. Take care.